we're supposed to be starting a lab today, but I'm not going to be able to start it till tomorrow.
What?
So today we've got to do what tomorrow is supposed to be, which is chapter 23. This is one of those chapters where you're not responsible for reading the whole chapter. All you're responsible for is what I talk about today. Do you like that kind of chapter?
So anything that you say in this class is so.
There you go.
This is so bad.
You like that?
Because there was some.
Oh, I like that.
Class that said I like that.
I don't think so.
Well, I don't think so either. I'm
Okay, so this is about plants, and you need to know how to shop for groceries. Now, you need to know the different types of plants that are out there, and this is basically them. These are the major groups of plants that exist. Now, plants evolved from green algae. So algae is a protist. Do y'all remember that? Protista, kingdom Protista. And all protists are reliant on water, but plants are not. So that's the difference between protists and plants, not being reliant on water. And the first types of organisms that were not reliant on water that we consider to be plants are these down here on the bottom here. Liverworts, hornworts, and mosses. Liverworts being the oldest of them. And you may have never seen a liverwort or a hornwort before. See if I have any pictures of them. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. That's what a liverwort looks like right there. It's a real low-growing plant. It doesn't have what we call vascular tissue. It's not able to transport water up through the plant. So it's a very low-growing plant. They're real small. They grow only on the ground, and you can find them in rainforests and stuff. When I was hiking in Ecuador, I found some. I was like, oh, they're liverworts. I'd never seen one live. And I was going crazy, and everybody's like, man, calm down, dude.
Mr. Willis, do you have any, note card thingies? Whatever they're
Maybe in
called?
the back.
I checked. Why are you telling me?
Which ones did you say were bottom water?
May
So
I go
all the earliest plant, the protists are totally reliant on water. They can't live outside water at all. But plants can. But these, the first types of plants were real low-growing plants, like the liverworts, which it reminded somebody. The leaves of these things reminded somebody of what a liver looks like. I don't know if you've ever seen an organ called the liver, but anyway. So let me back up here to this evolutionary tree. So these three right here are able to grow on land, but since they don't have what we call vascular tissue, none of these have vascular tissue. So since they don't have that, they're all low-growing plants. Y'all have probably heard of mosses before. Around here, when we say mosses, we're talking about Spanish moss usually. And that's not these kind of mosses. These kind of mosses right here, these are moss like you find. It looks like felt, green felt on rocks. Have you ever seen like moss next to a waterfall?
Mm-hmm.
Real low-growing plants. I'll take you outside and show you some of these mosses. You find them in damp areas, and it looks like green felt. And again, they're real low-growing because they don't have vascular tissue. What happened was vascular tissue evolved. Come on, where are you? There you go. Vascular tissue evolved, and vascular tissue are tubes that are inside the body of a plant that can move water up and down the plant. And it allowed plants to start growing tall. So, of the plants with vascular tissue, you have these lycophytes. They're called club mosses. You've probably never heard of them, but you have heard of ferns, right? Mm-hmm. Ferns are these ancient kind of plants. They come after mosses, but they can grow taller, and they're ferns.
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 But do lycophytes have vascular tissues too?
Lycophytes do have vascular tissue, but I'm not going to have you know lycophytes
So
for
we
this
should
next
just do
test.
ferns.
So, I want you to know what mosses are. They're real low-growing plants that don't have vascular tissue. Mosses are basically kind of the simplest types of plants. And then a little bit more complicated, you get vascular tissue and you get ferns. But ferns and mosses are different than higher plants because they don't have seeds. The next big evolutionary step that we'll talk about, they talk about megaphils and microphils here, and I don't care that you know about that, but I do want you to know about seeds. Seeds are important. Ferns don't have seeds. You can't plant a seed and grow a fern. You know how ferns grow? With a reproductive structure called a spore. Have you ever heard of spores? Mm-hmm. Spores are little cells that can be produced on the back of a fern frond. If you ever grab the leaf of a fern, look on the back of it, you might see a bunch of brown dots. You ever notice those? Those are spore-producing structures. And what they'll do is they'll release spores, little microscopic cells, into the air, and the spore will float around, and it'll land somewhere, and it'll basically grow into a new fern plant. It doesn't actually grow into the fern plant that you're used to seeing. It grows into another plant that can then grow into a fern plant. We'll talk about that in a minute. Ferns have a kind of a weird life cycle. But ferns don't have seeds. Once seeds evolved, plants took another big step. Seeds can last for years in bad environments, and spores cannot. Spores have a very short lifespan. If they don't land somewhere suitable and grow right away, the spore is going to die. But a seed can last. They found rice seeds that are 10,000 years old that they planted and grew into a rice plant. And so seeds can last a long time when conditions are bad, with the little embryo sitting inside the seed waiting to grow. And once seeds evolve, we have two major types of plants that come from seeds. You have the gymnosperms, which are like pine trees and fir trees, any plant that you see with cones, cycads, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Are pine trees?
Pine trees are gymnosperms. Anything with cones, redwood trees, aspens. And then fruit evolved, and flowers. And we had the flowering plants come from those. The flowering plants have seeds too, but they evolved flowers and fruit for reproduction. They're the most recent to come about. And flowering plants, man, they're smart. They use insects to help them reproduce. Insects and flowering plants kind of co-evolved at the same time. And flowers trick insects into pollinating for them. And flowers trick insects and birds and mammals into spreading their seeds for them. And flowering plants are the most successful. We spend a whole chapter talking about flowering plant reproduction later. And I'll explain to you exactly how flowering plants reproduce. Okay? But that's later. For now, we'll talk a little bit more about mosses and ferns and gymnosperms. So of this table, here's the 4 things you need to know. Mosses, ferns, gymnosperms, flowering plants. And we can make a kind of a much simpler tree here, with our outgroup being the
Mosses.
See what?
let's put the mosses first,
A little bit.
and then
Oh,
we
you can see
have,
it.
I guess actually before the mosses we could have green algae. And the difference between green algae and mosses are ability to live on land. And there's also another one here, protection of embryo, but I don't want to get into that too much. It might just confuse you. Anyway, after mosses evolved vascular tissue.
Don't we have vascular tissue?
We do. And it's the same sort of thing. Vascular tissue is like your veins, moving fluids around your body. Most plants have vascular tissue, and it moves water and sugars around their body. But then that leads to the ferns, and then we have seeds. Seeds lead to the gymnosperms. And then you have flowers, and that leads to the flowering plants. And that's good enough for you for this chapter. Mosses are the oldest, ferns come later, then gymnosperms, then flowering plants. I think if you ever saw questions about plants on the AP Bio test, that would cover it. They would use one of those types. They don't stress this chapter too much on the AP exam, which is why I'm only doing it in one day. So if you were reading this chapter, there'd be a lot of stuff here that you don't have to get that much into. Let's take a quick look at the life cycle of a moss. What page is this on in your book? You don't have a book open?
425.
425. Both mosses and ferns reproduce with spores, which are little cells that, like I say, can travel through the air. Let's start right here with spores. Spores will land somewhere. Got to be nice and wet wherever they land. And grow into a little branch. See this little horizontal running branch here? And that thing's microscopic. I mean, you can barely see it. It might look like a little thread.
It grows into a branch.
A spore will land somewhere and a little branch will grow out of the spore. And coming off of that branch are the little moss, what we call gametophytes. That's a word you need to know. Yeah, they're coming off the branches. A gametophyte is the plant. It doesn't actually have to be a plant. The part of the organism that makes Gametes. Y'all know what gametes are?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Sex cells.
Good. Sex cells, sperm or eggs. So what we see is we see these growing off of these branches. They have a name. It's called a protonema, but I don't want you to know that. Anyway, the spore lands, grows a little horizontal branch, and growing up out of those horizontal branches are vertical growths called gametophytes. They grow up. They don't grow up very far. They're only about that tall. Like I said, it looks like green felt in a wet area of the forest. And they have these little root-like structures called rhizoids that kind of absorb water for them. But they aren't true roots. And anyway, these gametophytes grow up, and you couldn't tell by looking at them, but the scientists know. Some of the gametophytes are female. That's female over here. And some of the gametophytes are male. And the male gametophyte, do y'all know the male symbol there? That's what Austin Powers wears around his neck. The male gametophytes produce sperm. And the female gametophytes produce eggs. So sperm are produced here, and eggs are produced here. And they show up close to sperm-producing structures. They're called antheridia. Antheridia produce sperm, and on the female structures, they're called archegonia that produce eggs. I want you to know those two terms too. Antheridia produce sperm. Archegonia produce eggs. So let me back it up here. So the spore lands. This little horizontal kind of runner grows out from the spore. These two gametophytes grow up from it. There it shows one growing right there. So imagine that gets bigger. It would look like this. Some of the gametophytes are male. Some of them are female. The male ones have antheridia that produce sperm. The female branches have archegonia that produce eggs. And when it gets wet, when it rains, and there's plenty of water there, kind of covering up the mosses, the sperm will break out of the antheridia and swim to the archegonia and fertilize the egg.
But only when it's wet?
Only when it's wet. The sperm have to swim. They got little tails on them. Think about that next time you're laying on some moss. There's probably moss sperm swimming all over your back. Pretty disgusting, huh?
Like it.
Anyway, the sperm fertilize the egg, and you have a zygote. A zygote is what we call a fertilized egg. And the zygote will multiply like crazy and grow into what they show here, a stalk and capsule. A stalk and capsule grows up out of the female gametophyte. So the egg just sits there. The sperm swims to the egg, fertilizes it, and you have your zygote. They're showing it up close right here. And the zygote will then start multiplying and grow into a stalk and capsule. And then the capsule will eventually ripen and burst open and release a bunch of spores, and the whole cycle starts back over.
What is a capsule?
Where's the fern?
Oh, is that
This isn't a fern now, this is a moss.
Oh.
But the moss is still right there. And the stalk and capsule grows on top of the moss.
And then the stalk breaks.
Now, well, the stalk will, after all the spores are released from the capsule, the stalk will wither up. And
So the
disappear.
capsule release spores.
The capsule bursts open and releases the spores. There's the capsule there.
when the cycle starts again.
The cycle starts again. This is a simple life cycle of the simplest of plants. Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Thought I might have video footage of it. I know I have video footage of it in the...
May I go get an envelope for our card?
Yes. So, this cycle, there's a couple things you need to know about it. Everything you see on the bottom here, in the tan area, the cells are haploid. Do y'all know what haploid means? Has a single set of chromosomes.
This guy. Hey, that guy.
What do we call cells that have two sets of chromosomes?
Diploid.
Diploid, okay? So, here's the deal. The spores are haploid cells. They land somewhere and grow this branch that's a haploid. All the cells are haploid, meaning they have one set of chromosomes. And these gametophytes that grow are haploid cells. All the cells in their bodies have one set of chromosomes. And the sperm that are made in the antheridia and the eggs that are made in the archegonia, they all have cells that have one set of chromosomes, not two. Now, when the sperm fertilizes the egg, we get a zygote, and that has two sets of chromosomes, one set from the sperm and one set from the egg. And it grows into a stalking capsule. The stalking capsule also has cells that have two sets of chromosomes because they grew from the zygote. Now, inside the capsule, meiosis is occurring, where the cells go from two sets of chromosomes back to spores with one set of chromosomes. Do y'all remember the process of meiosis? Going from two sets of chromosomes to one set?
Mm-hmm.
So we find that the cells of the gametophytes are fundamentally different from the cells of what we call the sporophyte. The sporophyte is the part of the organism that makes spores. We call that the sporophyte. And I misspelled it. Sporophyte. The sporophyte in this case is the stalk and capsule. So I want to find this video here for you.
So what's the difference between sporite and the gametophyte?
The sporophyte is always diploid. It has diploid cells. The gametophyte is always haploid. Yeah! Let's take a look at this little video.
Ow now, brown cow. Ow now, brown cow. Ow now, brown cow.
What was that?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
No, it's not a question.
Anchorman.
It was Anchorman.
Very beginning intro.
Okay,
This
so
guy.
here's a little moss life cycle for you. See if you can hang with it. Here we go.
I can hang.
Mosses alternate between the haploid gametophyte and the diploid sporophyte during their life cycle. The sporophyte generation in bryophytes develops from the gametophyte. Sporophytes receive much of their nutrition from the gametophyte. Spores are produced by meiosis in the capsule of the sporophyte. The spore capsule ripens, bursts, and releases the spores. A spore germinates to form a protonema.
Okay, so that's that horizontal running branch that I was telling you about. All right, 10 points if you can tell me what this is growing up from that horizontal running branch that comes from the spore. 10 points if you can tell me that.
I have no idea.
That holds.
What's the
we
name
cheating
of
over
the
here?
thing that's coming up
It's on camera now.
Vertically?
vertically
And
out of the
it's done.
spore?
Wins.
If you watch, the spore lands and grows a horizontal branch, and it's got something coming up vertically out of it. What do we call that thing that's coming up vertically? Uh-oh, there's two blues.
What?
Somebody's got to
my
settle on
goodness.
blue, and somebody's got to get another color.
Uh-oh.
Blue, white, green. Second blue,
Peach.
and peach. One of your blues better get another color.
There's a
Dun
couple over
dun
here.
dun.
White, correct.
That's kind of cute.
First blue's correct. Second blue's correct. And green's correct.
One of the blues
No
is
peach?
purple.
No peach.
One of the blues is purple now?
Right.
Alright. Okay, we call that the gametophyte. That thing growing up is called the gametophyte. Now watch what happens with the gametophyte.
The antheridium develops on the male gametophyte. Sperm form within the antheridium. The archegonium develops on the female gametophyte. An egg forms within the archegonium. Sperm are released from the antheridium and swim to the archegonium. Fertilization takes place inside the archegonium and a zygote is formed. The zygote divides by mitosis to form a new sporophyte in the form of a stalk and capsule.
You get that?
Mm-hmm.
So do they have to be like covered in water?
Yes, these things are real small. So this thing, it looks like a big tall branch, but it's about that tall.
Like one raindrop will do?
A few raindrops. Yeah, if it rained, you'd get a thin film of water over the whole thing, and the little sperm would be able to swim to the egg. Little sperm would be able to swim to the egg. Okay? So these sperm are developing in a structure here called the blank. 10 points if you can answer. The sperm are developing in this structure here. What do we call the structure that the sperm develops
No idea.
in? 10 points if you can get
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Do I look insane?
Another
A little
10
bit.
points if you can tell me what the structure that the egg is developing in is called.
Or
All right.
not.
Oh, oh,
Or not.
oh. What we got over here?
Okay, good.
Okay.
Green,
Nope.
correct on both. White, correct on both. Blue, correct on both. Purple, correct on both.
How about that?
Peach, correct on both. So, that's the antheridia. That's the archegonia. They're both haploid. But when the sperm fertilizes the egg, we have a diploid structure. 10 points if you can tell me what the diploid structure there is called. The sperm has fertilized the egg. What do we call that new structure there? It has a name. Anytime a sperm
Hey, I'm the
fertilizes
cameraman,
an egg,
all right?
a diploid structure has two sets of chromosomes. One that it got from the sperm and one that it got from
These
the
guys are
egg.
so smart.
Blue correct.
Yeah.
White correct.
That's what I thought it was. Oh,
Sorry.
oh show the camera. Show the camera. Oh.
Peach. I'm not going to count right or wrong. Green correct.
Do that.
Purple correct. It's
Oh,
called
we got
zygote.
we got those right.
The zygote.
Got the new green?
Okay, I'll give it to you. Yeah, we'll put sporophyte, which is I guess that's technically correct.
Mhm.
The zygote, which is diploid, makes up the sporophyte and grows into this stalking capsule. And tell me, last question, what is going to develop in that capsule?
don't know any of these.
10 points if you can tell me what develops in that capsule.
Oh,
wait.
right there.
And what process causes
process.
the development of them? What develops in the capsule, and you got to get it both right to get the 10 points. What process causes the development of those things?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Ah, time is up. Okay, I'm going to finish this chapter tomorrow, and hopefully we'll start on that lab tomorrow. Thank you for filming there.
Oh, no problem. I'm taking it with me.
Green right on one, wrong on one, no points. Peach right on both.
Are you filming that?
I'm good.
You okay?
Yep.
What'd you do?
Someone tripped me.
Blue right on one,
Oh.
nothing on the other.
Can you tell us the
Yes, I'm finished. Its spores are produced in the capsule by the process of meiosis. Meiosis goes from diploid back to haploid.